Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is Nothing But Bangers, aka MBB, aka Bangers, aka I'm back with the third tournament recap that we've done on this channel. I try to do this and have it released to you at least every Monday, sometimes early, sometimes late. But I generally go over some of the biggest tournaments and their results. I give you a little bit of feedback as well as what stood out. And in today's video, MEWTWO has struck back. It's going to be a very interesting meta to see how it continues to shape up, but let's just get to the details of these tournaments. So before I get started with recapping these tournaments, I do want to point out that recently there was a video that came out and pretty much kind of vocalized the idea that fossils should be in MEWTWO decks, fossils should be in Charizard decks, and I just would kind of push back on that video a little bit, even before seeing these results. And I think that a lot of the time, like if you know, somebody is going to take time to go ahead and make these videos, I do think that they should be playing at least in some of these tournaments. And unfortunately, you know, due to time, you know, concerns, maybe they stream in the afternoon and the tournaments are happening in the evening. You know, they just kind of don't play in these tournaments. But I do think that a lot of knowledge would be gained by either playing in these tournaments or literally testing against the top decks that are finishing in these tournaments. Because when you play on the ladder, you typically run into a bunch of random stuff, right? Like every now and then you'll run into, obviously, a Mewtwo and Pikachu, but you're playing up against a bunch of, you know, random decks. But when you play 10 games against Pikachu, 10 games against Mewtwo, 10 games against Charizard, 10 games against another Pikachu variant, you get a feel for how your deck and how your idea like matches up against the best decks in the format. But when you take time to make a video without like any of that testing or any like tournament background in terms of pocket, I think that it's very hard to take that information as being like legitimate. And I think the results are going to kind of speak for themselves for this past weekend. And obviously, as more tournaments get played, you know, maybe we do see more fossil techs, but I just don't think that it's very good. I think that, honestly, there's other ways to approach playing those extra slots in your deck. And you'll see that in these tournament results. But if you're curious on how I found these tournament results, you can head on over to play.limitlesstcg.com. And you can go ahead and check these tournaments along with me and pull up all the deck list as well. But again, I do hope that, you know, for example, that specific creator, I do hope that Andrew plays in some tournaments. I hope that instead of streaming during the day, they just choose to stream later in the day and stream one of the tournaments so we can kind of all cheer them on and watch them. But I do think that, you know, hey, from my interactions with them, on their Twitch stream, they just don't want to play in tournaments. So I think that, you know, we should send positive vibes to them. And again, I'm not trying to, you know, downplay anybody or anything like that. But I do think that, hey, getting that tournament experience for Pocket would change your opinion on some of the takes that you may or may not have. So let's get into some of these tournaments from this past weekend. So starting off with this tournament, again, every tournament that I'm going to be talking about was over 100 people. And I'm going to give you the deck breakdown as well for each of these tournaments. So for this top cut, okay, I'm just going to talk about top cut. You can check out the metagame, but again, you're going to see the three popular decks being Mewtwo, Pikachu, and Charizard throughout all these tournaments. So this was a top 8 cut, and out of the top 8, let's see, I believe it actually had a top 16 cut as well. So my data is actually from the top 16. So let me click over here to the top 16, and you'll notice when I wrote down all of these decks, the following was the breakdown: 7 Mewtwo decks, 9 Pikachu decks, and then that's it. It was literally all Mewtwo and Pikachu. And when you take a look at the top 4, out of the top 4, 3 players brought red card. So I'm done beating the dead horse that is red card good? Is it good in ladder? Is it good in tournament? I made a whole video on that. And, you know, I would just give you this as my last words because, honestly, I'm just kind of past this whole debate. Don't play 2 red cards. That's my first thing. I would never play 2 red cards. Second, I would say focus on your deck strategy first. If your deck needs potions to heal, to keep things alive, play potion. If your deck needs extra damage to finish things off, play Giovanni. So just whatever your deck strategy is, I would focus on that first. And then third, if you have the room, You don't need those extra tech cards. You don't need extra space. Sure, playing one red card, not a bad idea for tournaments, okay? Obviously, ladder's its own thing, and events, probably their own thing as well. And again, check out my other video where I talk about it, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'm just going to give you the numbers of how many people were playing red card in top 4, and that's it, okay? So, this was the winning deck list for this tournament. And you're going to notice there's no fossils. There is a Mewtwo that is not EX in this deck. So, you may be wondering, why was Mewtwo played in this Mewtwo deck? Well, let's talk about that really quickly. It has 120 HP, meaning it survives attacks from Pikachu EX, so that is huge. It's also a one prize Pokemon, which means that you can trade this and feel good about it if you're knocking out an EX Pokemon. It can also make your opponent deal quite a bit of damage to this. Then they have to find a way to knock out your Mewtwo EX. So you could potentially send out this Mewtwo, let it get knocked out, send out a Mewtwo EX, let it get damage put on it while you're still doing 50 with it, retreat that Mewtwo, send in your other Mewtwo EX, and now they've got to deal enough damage to knock out that Mewtwo EX as well, unless they find a way to snipe, your other Mewtwo EX, right? So again, it's a very good tech. Again, I would prefer this over fossils every day that ends in Y. And that's just my opinion, okay? But again, this is Mewtwo winning one tournament. Let's move on to another tournament. So this was Ursis tournament, over 1,000 entries, big prize money in this compared to the other tournaments as well. So you can expect people are going to try to bring their best or what they think is the best. And when I broke down the data from this top cut, I got only 2 Mewtwo EX decks in the entire top cut, which is crazy. 11 Pikachu variants, 2 Charizard decks, and 2 players in the top 4 brought red card. Now, what was the winning deck list? The winning deck list was a Pikachu variant that played Pincurchin, and 2 Zapdos EX, and 2 Zeb Snipers. So no Lieutenant Surge, no Raichu. You'll notice double potion and 1 Giovanni do fixed damage. So 1 for Pikachu, 1 for Mewtwo so far if you're keeping score. Now, heading into the next tournament. Now, this top cut, this is from the Legends League. So they do an asymmetric cut. So that means if you're X2, you immediately get put into day 2. And it's a tournament that takes place over 2 days. They do 2 tournaments every week. 1 in the middle of the week on Wednesdays, and then 1 on the weekend. Usually the one in the middle of the week is like a rules tournament, so they'll have like no EXs, or they'll have a rule for that tournament. So look forward to some of my content. I will talk about those tournaments during the week as well and give you a little bit of a preview. Now, let's get to the results of this. So when I broke down this top cut, again, asymmetric cut, so everybody X2 got into day 2. There were 7 Mewtwo decks. There were 14 Pikachu variants. There were 2 Arbok and Weezing decks. There was 1 Charizard deck, 1 Alolan Ninetales and Moltres deck, 1 Marowak EX deck. In the top 4, 3 players brought red card. If you want to know more about that Arcanine list with Moltres, I've already made a video on it. It's got a great Pikachu matchup as long as you draw the Arcanine, and it's got a pretty rough matchup with Mewtwo. The way that I would explain the Arcanine list is the Arcanine list kind of reminds me of like a faster Machamp, which ironically I'm going to highlight Machamp because it did finish with Marowak EX in this tournament, right? So I'll talk about this deck here in a little bit, but basically that Arcanine list, it's kind of like, it's a stage 1 deck that focuses on using Moltres to ramp the Arcanine, and then Arcanine to one-shot things or at least start taking things out. And the reason why I compare it to Machamp is it does the same amount of damage. They both do 120 damage. However, in my opinion, Arcanine's a little bit faster than Machamp because it's a stage 1 and you're ramping it with Moltres. Now, let's talk about this deck. This deck played double Marowak EX as well as a Marowak regular, just a base Marowak, and then it ran the Machamp families as 2-ofs. So obviously this person was either curving Machamp pretty frequently in the tournament, or they were flipping a lot of heads with Marowak EX, because otherwise, I mean, this deck, it does kind of struggle in a lot of matchups. Obviously the Mewtwo matchup is kind of rough, but hey, you have Marowak EX potentially to bail you out with a couple of double heads. Then obviously you'll notice red card was in this deck, 1 Giovanni, 1 Potion, and then double Sabrina. So hey, maybe that's worth testing out. The winning deck list was a Mewtwo and Gardevoir list, and you'll notice there is that base Mewtwo in this deck as well, so no Jinx, and again, no fossils. But it did include red card. So you can kind of take a look at that. Double potion, 1 Sabrina, 1 Giovanni. Now, moving on to the next tournament. And I believe the breakdown for this tournament, let's see. I think it had an asymmetric cut. So I tried to, I wrote down all the decks for the asymmetric cut. So again, everybody with a certain record or a certain amount of points got into the asymmetric cut. And my breakdown for this cut was 4 Mewtwo decks, 5 Pikachu variants, 1 Weezing and Arbok, and then 1 Muck Weezing Arbok, and then 1 Arcanine and Moltres deck. When you take a look at the top 8, let's get the bracket up here. You'll notice what the top 8 matchups were, and then just fast forwarding to the top 4, 3 players brought red card in the top 4. So just, again, giving you those details. The winning deck list was a Mewtwo Gardevoir deck, and there was one curveball with this deck list. Instead of playing base Mewtwo, they played Kangaskhan. Again, no fossils. So the Kangaskhan here, its job is to be that early pressure. Maybe you're flipping double heads and knocking out somebody's Execute, happened to me this weekend, or maybe you're knocking out somebody's Charmander or somebody's just basic Pokemon. At the very least, maybe you're chipping damage. Worst case, you're flipping a bunch of tails and just saying, why did I ever bring this card? You know, curse me, right? But 1 red card, double potion, no Giovanni, but they brought double Sabrina. I would venture to guess that the reason they brought no Giovanni is because they were playing Kangaskhan. So, you know, instead of trying to get the math right to knock out basics with Giovanni, they just said, you know, hey, I'll just play Kangaskhan and try to get lucky. All right, going to the next tournament that I will be covering. Now, I broke down the top cut of this as well. So here I'll scroll down a little bit and rattle off these numbers. 10 Pikachu variants, 4 Mewtwo Gardevoir decks, 2 Charizard decks, 1 Marowak EX deck. And I believe the Marowak EX deck might have been a little spicy. Oh no, it played Sandslash. Then 1 Weezing Arbok, 1 Blaine's Ninetales. And when you get to the top 4, 3 players brought red card. To highlight the winning deck list, the winning deck list was a Pikachu variant. Now, the really interesting thing about this, because there's a lot of debate in the Pikachu people that are playtesting this deck. Some of them hate Zapdos EX. Some of them have cut it from their list. But in both of the winning deck lists, they brought 2 Zapdos EX. In this version, they played double Lieutenant Surge and double Raichu. So that way, you know, hey, they had a different engine, a different variant than the other winning Pikachu deck list. So a little bit of difference there. They played red card as well, and then 1 Giovanni along with 2 Sabrinas. Heading to the last tournament that I will cover. And again, thank you so much for watching. If you want more content that is kind of focused more on, hey, trying to cater to the top level players, but also trying to help people that are trying to step their game up, definitely hit that subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. Drop that thumbs up, leave some comments, so that way this video reaches more people. I definitely appreciate that. But let's break down this last tournament. There were 8 Mewtwo variants. There were 5 Pikachu variants, 2 Arcanine and Moltres decks, 1 Marowak and Primeape deck, which we'll check out here in a second. Mewtwo was the winner. 3 out of the 4 players in the top 4 brought red card. So let's talk about the deck list. That was Primeape and Marowak. Really cool to see that they released a promo card and it immediately, you know, gets a top cut and, you know, does pretty well. And this was very similar to the list that I was trying to test. I suck at coin flips when it comes to Marowak EX, so I just put the deck down and started playing Sandslash with it. But if you want to see this deck in action, might play it on stream. Let me know what you want to see on stream. That way I kind of have an idea what to stream on Twitch. Because again, I will be streaming on Twitch this week. I promise. Last week, I just kind of dropped the ball. I'm not going to lie to you. But when you take a look at this deck list, 1 red card, double potion, 1 Giovanni, double Sabrina for the trainers as far as some of the spice there. Again, you know, if you're flipping heads, you're probably winning some games, especially if you're playing something like Marowak EX. Heading to the winning deck list, Mewtwo won its 4th tournament. Pikachu is going to take away 2 tournaments from this past weekend, and you'll notice there is a base Mewtwo in here, a red card in the main deck, as well as 1 Sabrina and double Giovanni. I do like this deck list. It's probably my favorite deck list out of the Mewtwo variants that we've covered so far. So, what are the main takeaways? So, 4 out of the 6 tournaments were won by Mewtwo. All the Mewtwo variants played either Kangaskhan or base Mewtwo. No fossils. there were only, I believe, 2 fossils played in all of the Mewtwo decks that topped out of all these events. And one of them played Aerodactyl. So, you know, keep that in mind. Only 2 Charizards out of all these top cuts played fossils as well. So, you know, take that for what you will. Again, I just think that when you actually play the game at a tournament level, or when you play the game in a vacuum against the other best decks, you'll come away with the idea that, hey, maybe my thought process on, you know, fossils was not so great. You know, maybe they're not the answer to everything. Maybe stuff like Kangaskhan and Mewtwo maybe fit that role just a little bit better. I don't know. That's just me. That's just me. I'm just one guy. Also, the last couple takeaways, again, you know, Pikachu lists are still kind of up in the air, you know, what variant you play, but it is worth noting that, hey, Zapdos EX played in both the winning deck list, and again, Raichu and Pincurchin played in both the winning decks, or, you know, one each, right? So, hey, the way you choose to build your Pikachu deck, you've got options, so that's good. But again, I hope you enjoy this breakdown, and I hope that you come back for more content like this, and stay tuned for some more videos popping up at the end of this video. And until next time, peace!